I recognize those Susan Cottrell special earrings.
Hi, Laurel.
Hi, I sent you some things that I wrote back in the day.
I haven't had a chance. I saw them. I haven't had a chance to read them, but I did see them, and I am going to read them. Thank you so much for sending them.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And Gail, just so you know, I have been a journeyer since the Y.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Laura's been here longer than I have.
Yeah, so it was started in July. I think it was Doug Sheehan, Jim Cannon, Margaret, I don't remember there were 5 men that after Rick was fired, approached him I always called it like a chasm at Riverbend because, 40, 50 people broke off to start Journey from Riverbend. So, and then they approached. Huh? I was not
part of that.
Who was?
The Corbins, Susan and John Corbin.
Yes. So it might have been there were 5 men that kind of initiated it and started it off and broke off. And and I don't think you know some of these people, Gail. Jim Cannon, Doug Sheehan, John Corbin, which he's still around. And I don't remember the other 2. There are 5 men that approached Rick and said, would you be our pastor? We want to start a new church. We want to do things differently. We don't like what has happened to you. And we don't want to lose you because Rick was designated to be and I don't remember the man's name anymore.
And I wasn't there.
He was pretty big in Austin.
Yeah, we need to ask one of the other old timers. They'll know. They'll remember.
Yeah. But that's how Journey started, and we met out of the Y, and so that was July. That was like late July. And then that following January, I joined or put in my rock or whatever. So
I think
I've been there. It only been in existence about 6 months.
Gotcha. Wow. So you've been through all of these transitions.
Yes.
That is great. I'm glad that you're on the call.
And just some backstory, Gail, is back when we were still at the Y and we were looking at different options and they were trying to get out of the Y because it was growing and it was hard. You only had a certain amount of time. You couldn't do anything in the evening and what have you, right? So there was, the sanctuary was by, and again, I don't remember his name either. There was a man there that was kind of a old school, had been there for quite a while. And I don't remember his name either. And they decided to see, could the 2 churches merge? So at that point, it was Terrytown Baptist. It wasn't called Sanctuary. And could the 2 churches merge into one? And it didn't work out. It was like we had like a date, quote unquote, and it was like a Monday, Thursday service. And it didn't work out. So where was I going? So anyway, then it became Sanctuary, and they were really kind of hurting for people to, because their church had really gotten small, which it once was a big campus. And so they like had a school come in and rent some space, and they were really like hurting. So that made it very convenient to get the space from what they call Beverly Hall, which was their old like not worship center, but like, where you go afterwards.
The Fellowship Hall.
Fellowship Hall, yeah.
Can you guys hear me okay? I sometimes have problems with my audio. I'm amazed I got it to work this time, so just checking.
No, this is great.
Okay. Yeah, so Sanctuary had its own story in the meantime, right? They had been Terrytown Baptist, and what some of our friends at Sanctuary that we got to know once, excuse me, I need to silence my phone. One of our Sanctuary friends was telling me that one of the reasons that they were hurting, as Laura rightly points out, is that they had a big split as well over how accepting they were going to be of the LGBT community. And there were a bunch of folks that decided that they didn't want to be as accepting as some of the other people in the church did. And the ones that stayed are the ones that renamed it the Sanctuary, and they're the group that wanted to be very accepting of the LGBT community.
Gotcha.
But they lost
Hi,
a lot of
Jacob.
their people at that point. Hi, Jacob. And they wound up, I think, selling altogether the Fellowship Hall, which was a separate building behind the Sanctuary building, and to the school. And then the school leased it to us for use at certain times, Sunday mornings and, certain other times as needed, so that we could do some evening stuff as well. But yeah, we wound up establishing good relations with not only Sanctuary itself. We would do some things together. We had some other, like Easter services together, things like that, or like Maundy Thursday, actually. Do you remember, Laurel, were you there the time we did the interpretive floristry? Do you remember that?
I probably do. It was 2011.
That sounds about right.
Coming out of it was summer of 2011, right before like our birthday. Yeah. Because I had just moved from off of campus. So Gail and Jacob, hi Jacob, I'm Laurel. I used to live in the bomb shelter. Do you remember the bomb shelter?
No, what is that?
It was next to the fire station.
Oh, okay.
On school, APTS.
Yeah.
Now it's something else.
Yeah, they tore all that down and reconstructed. Right. Now they have this great big building out there. Yeah.
So I moved over by airport in 2222. Mm-hmm. And it was right after that we moved into Beverly Hall.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
And so yeah, it was 2011 because I was still doing my residency at Seton at that point.
Particularly when they got a new pastor, a younger pastor, their older pastor had retired.
Brent Bowen.
Brent Bowden, yeah, he was awesome. And Rick and Brent we did a number of things together. We did some classes together. We did some special worship services together, like this Maundy Thursday one. And I can remember Rick talking with us on the Soul Train, who were helping, who would often help with worship. And he was describing the process when he met with Brent about how to put together a service that would be fulfilling for both the people who are accustomed to Sanctuary style and the people who were accustomed to Journey style, right? And Rick was saying, well, we have this, and we have this kind of person, and this this talent, and this talent, and this talent to bring to the table. What do you guys have? What sort of skills? What kind of people do you have in your congregation that might be interested in participating? And the answer he got was, well, we have a florist. And so I kid you not, during this long reading, gospel reading about the whole, I swear it felt like it went on forever. But it was this really long, but appropriate for Maundy Thursday, right? Because you're going deep into the tunnel kind of thing, that kind of feeling. So there was this long reading, and their florist was up on the stage, the dais, because we did this in the Sanctuary building, so they actually had one of those, and doing interpretive floristry, putting together this arrangement and trimming it and adjusting it, and he created this beautiful, appropriate Maundy Thursday arrangement under this reading, which was being read by somebody, and then Renee was essentially scoring it live, playing to go with what was being read and what was happening with the floristry. It was awesome.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was.
I remember one of the Wild Goose festivals, in fact, the last one I went to, they had set up to the side of the stage like a pop-up tent, and in it a big easel with a big canvas. And one of my friends was up there. She's an artist, and she was doing interpretive, art on the canvas as the whole program was going on. It's so
Yeah.
amazing. We need to do that someday.
Oh, we've done it
Yeah.
a number of times.
That's
so
It would be
cool.
great to do it again. Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing that we did together is we had a community garden
I've heard about that.
and like jazz, like a jazz night or whatever. And ironically, Brent and I were, we were in residency together. We were in the same group at Seton. So I remember the afternoon with the summer of 2011 when he got the call that he had applied at Sanctuary and that he was like asked back for a second or third interview. So he went directly from his residency in August of 2011 to being the pastor of Sanctuary and working with me.
Cool.
So we
how
were we were in Beverly Hall a few months before Brent was hired.
How did the community garden happen and what became of it?
I don't know what
vision
came
and
of
what
it,
was
but I
it?
remember the man's name who used to be Terrytown Baptist. His name was Courtney something or other. Margaret, does that now sound familiar? His first name's Courtney.
No.
He had a
Oh,
real
wow.
like a girl last name, a girl name, but I think it was Courtney.
That doesn't ring a bell with me. I don't think that was it. But
I'll have to look it
wasn't
up.
his wife the singer?
Yes, his wife won
She's a
like
really well-known
a
singer.
Grammy or something for, or an Emmy or something for.
Something, yeah. We need
I
another old
think it
timer on here to
was.
help us remember these things. Where is everybody? But yeah, so we moved in and we're a friendly sort. And so we made nice with the neighbors. We did stuff with Sanctuary. We also did stuff with the school, and would do some joint events. And so we had a pretty good relationship with the school as well. That was always a good thing.
Yeah.
The garden,
And we could use anything.
It was a while before we did the garden. There was this unused space. So when Sanctuary was Terrytown Baptist, and it had all this stuff, it had all this land, right? And so they had their big sanctuary building with some classrooms in it as well, and like a proper vestry and all that, like, technical Christian stuff. And classrooms back in there. And then they had the separate fellowship hall, which was a 2-story thing, not only the big hall underneath with its attached kitchen, but more classrooms up above. So that was nice for the school that used it as their cafeteria and their extra classrooms. But they even had a little house with a little plot of land for an artist in residence.
Wow.
I mean,
I
can
remember.
you even imagine?
I remember the
They
house.
were very supportive of the arts. I think in part because of the wife who was the singer, who was of course an artist herself, and so they were very supportive of the fine arts as well as performance arts. And but no one had been there for a while because their congregation had shrunk, and there was this plot of land and nothing was being done with it. And I can't remember whose idea it was anymore, but we got to talking about it and came up with the idea of doing a community garden. So the school and Sanctuary and Journey all kind of pitched in together. The school was excited about getting to use it for like lessons and stuff. And we were going to donate the food to local, food bank and stuff like that. And several of our journeyers really took point on it. They were very excited about it. I'm not so much with the gardening. I'm a Darwinian gardener. Only strong things survive me. So I was not very much involved because I wanted it to be successful, you see. But several of our journeyers were very involved with it. I'm not sure. I mean, we're not there anymore, so I don't know if folks at Sanctuary maintained it. I actually drove past there the other day, and I didn't see anything, I didn't see like giant stalks of corn or anything. But then again, we never really did. So I don't know. I don't know how things are doing at the Sanctuary either. I know that Brent has moved on.
He's in New York now.
Yeah, last I heard.
I'm trying to like look them up on the web, and I'm wondering if they don't have a website, or does it look like they have a website?
I would recognize the names of the people at Sanctuary if I heard them, but I'm not calling them to mind right now. But Beverly Hall was interesting being at Beverly Hall. We became once again the church that had to get packed away and come out again. We no longer had the freedom to paint the floors and have a really giant space the way we did before. Aha, Natalie's here. She'll know the names that we were trying to remember. So it was more confining in some ways because again, we were renting. On the bright side, it was a much better rental space than the YMCA had been because it was larger in a lot of ways. We had a nice yard, we had a good kitchen so we could serve food, and we had these tables, the cafeteria tables that we could, use for activities or props or
And cafeteria and
like
classrooms.
We had access to the classrooms upstairs. So we no longer had our youth group meeting, in the alcove of the doors that were the entrance to the swimming pool at the Y, which is where they met at first. They actually got their own room, so that was nice. But it was kind of hard in some ways, going from a place that was our own to a place that again was no longer ours. And we made the best of it because that's what we do. But it was hard in some ways. But we also had a lot of good times there. We had retreats there. There's some photos of that on the slideshow that we'll show later.
I was ordained there.
Great vigils.
Oh, really?
We had,
Mhm.
yeah, we had concerts. We had a lot of interesting, worship services there. At our last lunchbox with staff, Leslie was talking about how one of her favorite worship series was the one about science and faith, which I was part of creating. And we did Mentos and Diet Coke in the parking lot because we could do that. It was awesome. I've got some photos of not the Mentos and Diet Coke, but one of you'll see a shot with some dominoes. That was from that series. Yeah, we did some cool stuff. There was a time we made stone soup. Do you remember that day, Natalie? The day we made soup? Stone soup?
I remember that.
Natalie, I
that
can't
one,
hear
Natalie?
you. You're
You're muted, sweetie.
I don't think I was there when you made stone soup. Where
Okay.
are you talking about at Beverly Hall?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I didn't join until toward the very end of the time that y'all were there.
Okay. See, I get confused about that because I first met you at the warehouse, and it
When
just
I
feels
did
like
the
you've always been around.
presentation about
So,
Truth Be Told.
yeah.
Yeah.
But hence my confusion. Then again, I'm also easily confused. So there you go.
But I love stone soup.
Yeah. That was a good day. I got quite a lesson that day. Let God make the soup, because I was worried. I was worried about it because, okay, at this point, how long? I don't know, like 16, 17 years, recovering perfectionist now. But still, you got to take it one day at a time. When you're in recovery,
Yeah,
the
you have to
demon's grip
trust
is
that higher
always
power.
there.
Yeah.
The demon is always there, ready to poke you, and so we had this, and this was my idea in worship service, which is one of the reasons I remember it so well, and because I had a stake in it, right? And it's one of the reasons that the demon could get to me, because I had a stake in it, right? So the theme in the worship service was that we all have our gifts, we all bring something to the table, and as a worship activity, we had a bunch of different ingredients that we had prepped that were out on a table, and we had a little hot plate, and we had a big stock pot, thank you, of water. And I sort of like gotten it started, right? Like I had some broth with some water in it and a little like salt and pepper. And then everybody else came through as part of worship. Maybe some of our folks who are just joining remember the day we did stone soup in Beverly Hall. I was just telling that story. And so during worship, folks came through when they would pick ingredients and they would add it to the soup. And then, hey, Susan, and and then we drank it. We served it and we had the soup. We ate the soup. And people are adding these things, and I'm back there and I'm stirring, and I was one of the ones who helped make this happen. And the demons got a hold of me, right? The demon perfections got a hold of me, and I'm like, this is going to taste awful. There's going to be no flavor balance. This is going to be, God only knows, but it's okay. It's a metaphor. It's all right. Let it go. Let it go. It's a metaphor. Everybody understands it's a metaphor. It's okay if the soup doesn't taste great. It's all right. Breathe. Fight off the voices of the demon, right? This is what's happening inside my head. So eventually we get to the point where we're actually having the soup. It was really good. It actually tasted good. So my lesson from that day that I still carry with me is let God make the soup.
Amen.
I'll show up with my stock pot. I will stir. I will let God make the soup and not worry so much about controlling the flavor of it. So yeah, there you go.
Amen. I have an anecdote that Sally couldn't be here. She ended up having a client at this time. But I have a video she sent with an anecdote that she's got. Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we can do.
One recollection of an Easter prayer vigil that I will never forget at Beverly Hall went like this.
I know she's gonna
Sherry
say.
and I entered the back of Beverly Hall, and that was the beginning of the prayer space. And it snaked around in twists and turns with these creative reflection stations and lots of candles. We had just exited the space or the building when Renee French came out yelling, "Fire, fire, call 911." So we did, and apparently one of the candles set off a flame that turned into a blaze. We were very concerned at first, as we didn't know how extensive it was, but thankfully it was contained in this one or two areas that we were able to repair later. Thankfully the fire trucks were on the scene. They were right there and put it out. So much for a calm prayer time. But I do remember that the Ross and Saunders people weren't so hot on us using their space after that time.
Okay, I have a confession. John probably will remember this. Okay, so I was the sentry before they got there.
Oh,
And I walked through before they came, made sure everything was okay, kind of adjusted some things, and, you know, and then walked out, everything was fine. And all I could think about is, did I inadvertently move something that started the fire?
And you've carried that burden all these years.
John, you knew that, right?
I
Probably.
think so. I don't think, yeah, I think I recall something to that effect.
Well,
And it was,
there too.
and I was
we
so
were
excited
showing up
because
for
it
our
was,
shift
huh?
right after. We were there too.
Yeah.
Because I had the next shift after you for Sentry.
No,
Well,
after
and
Sally, because Sally was after me.
Oh, okay. So then I was the next one up, right? Is the
Right.
point. And the fire had started and we got there and there are all these fire trucks everywhere. And yeah, it wasn't
And
so
I,
bad.
was really bummed
documented
because
it.
it was my idea. The layout and everything was my idea to do the Stations of the Cross.
Mhm. It was a good
But-
vigil, you know. part
It
of
was
the
a
story.
great
A
vigil,
little
up
exciting.
to a point.
We missed
So
it all.
I have carried that guilt that I just walked through and just kind of made sure everything was okay, but maybe I moved something in just the right way that I didn't, you know, I don't know.
We give you
Laurel.
permission to let
Laurel.
that go, Laurel.
yes. Everybody put your hands up and send blessings to Laurel. That's been a long
Thank you.
time to feel guilty.
It's okay.
You are absolved. Our sister, you're absolved.
Yeah,
But I
just
remember that we had to
being
paint.
home and getting a text from Rick that, or maybe it was a phone call that said, our building's on fire, God help us. And that was it.
But I can't remember, didn't we have to like paint? We had to repaint?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We
Tried
tried,
to clean it.
we tried cleaning and some tiles were damaged and I spent months trying
months.
to,
Matched them.
I spent a long time trying to get the tile matched. And eventually I got Bob Werner and I said, hey, I got an idea. So we went into one of the closets and pried up about 4 tiles out of the closet
Oh, that was smart.
and installed them where the fire was. And then some other tile that we found that was a close match,
match.
but not quite. We installed that in the closet.
Good thinking.
Ta-da.
Very smart.
That's why they pay
Well,
the big bucks, John.
As a passionate Easter Vigilist, I have to ask, did the vigil continue to go, or was it toward the end of it?
No, that was it.
That was it. Yeah, it was, I think, the second day.
Yeah, it was Saturday night.
It was
So
Saturday.
y'all were
yeah.
able to cancel whoever was coming after that?
Yeah, I don't think there were very many more that were going to be there at
I'm
that
so
point.
glad
but
that
yeah.
wasn't my first vigil.
We had another vigil the year before that one, because that was the last Easter that we were in Beverly Hall.
Yeah.
And it was this girl named Mandy who used to date this guy named, it's right on the tip of my tongue, Dave Madden. Do you remember Mandy?
Oh,
Who used to date Dave?
The dancer?
I
yeah. She's a yoga
no,
teacher.
Okay.
yeah. And so there was a big labyrinth, like a white cloth that we had rented, and then all kinds of small candles around that. And it was dark.
I went to that one.
Yep. I
Yeah,
remember.
Yeah,
was
and
a good-
then
I-
like
I
you
liked the
walk
labyrinth.
through and you got your like feet washed and
Mhm.
Yeah.
you go into the building and walk the labyrinth.
Yep.
You guys remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was a good one.
I went to
Had
that.
yep, we had our Birds on a Branch women's retreat was there. The one about fairy tales, that one was at Beverly Hall as
And
well.
the Indian one
Wasn't that Birds on a
about
Branch?
being brave. It was
Being
like
brave.
being
You're right. You're right. There was a third one.
Yeah.
Third one at Beverly Hall. We did
And the Birds on the Branch,
the
what is that?
kids, the kids thing. The what do you call it? The thing that you do when the kids with the summer.
summer
Bible
camp.
school, vacation Bible school. That's it.
Yeah.
Another one of those Christian
VBS.
technical things. So
And we did that with Sanctuary.
Yeah, we did that in conjunction with Sanctuary.
With Sanctuary and University Baptist.
Mm-hmm. That was cool. We had T-shirts and everything.
Did anybody
You know, I
talk
love a good
about
t-shirt.
how we got into Beverly Hall and Sanctuary?
Tell us about it, because everybody's memory is going to be a little different.
Well, mine's kind of foggy, but I'll try to piece it together. So we knew we had to leave the warehouse. We were basically being thrown out because we couldn't keep up the payment escalations that were about, I don't know, 6% a year. It was pretty easy year one, but in year 5, it was painful. I think we were paying around $9,000 a month in our lease payment. That's a lot of money for a little church. So we knew we had to leave, even though we had a lot of money invested in our warehouse, but that's the way it was at the time. So we had a small team. I was on it, Val Curl, I think Julie Potts, Leslie was heavy into it. Rick was part of it, and probably others that I'm forgetting. I think even maybe Alan Slavinsky was part of that. And we were looking all over the place. We spent a lot of time. Oh, Julie was there. Haynes, because she knows her way around commercial real estate. And we had an agent at the time whose name escapes me, but someone knew an agent and we had been working with him. But we had looked all over. We'd looked at University Baptist. They had some space and we were trying to figure out if we could work a deal there. I don't remember what the conflict was. I think there was already somebody in their space on Sundays. And then we looked at a place out near, what's the big crossroad, Margaret, that goes east into Pflugerville?
Do you mean 290?
No, not 290. Wells Branch.
Wells
There was
Wells
some
Branch Parkway? Yeah.
Yeah, there was some commercial property on Wells Branch Parkway. We had looked at
John,
that.
you're gonna have to reel it in.
Yeah, I was really hoping for that one.
Yeah, we kind of liked that one. I don't remember.
That one would have been great for me.
Yeah, I don't remember what the problem was with it. And we had looked at a bunch of places, but nothing was coming together. And we're like in the last week of our lease in the warehouse. And we had already planned to move out the coming weekend and get everything out. We had no place to go. We're like 3 days to go. And Oh, and we talked to, there's another Baptist church on Balcones that we talked
You
about
hadn't
sharing.
even talked to, you hadn't even talked to
No, I think we had talked,
Sanctuary by that time?
to Sanctuary because we
I
talked to
thought
them
you
early.
had. I know.
We talked to Sanctuary even when we were in early days of Journey before we moved into
I
the
remember that
warehouse.
too, but still, John,
Yeah.
you're saying that at that point, there was
Oh,
no,
we had talked to Sanctuary, but
because I remember lots of conflict and lots of discussion.
yeah, we had talked to Sanctuary about sharing space, but they weren't keen on sharing their Sunday mornings or their Sunday evenings, giving that up. And we were reluctant to not be meeting on Sundays. So we didn't know where we were going to go. And we're down to like 3 days to go. And I don't remember who negotiated or brokered this deal or came up with the bright idea. It may have been somewhat at Sanctuary, who said, well, why don't you guys go talk to Ross and Saunders? They have space and we are partners with them, and maybe we can give you some office space here, and maybe they can share some of their space in Ross and Saunders. I don't know who came up with that idea or brokered it, but we went and talked to the principal there at Ross and Saunders, and she was very receptive at the time. And
They needed the money.
and so all this turned up one afternoon about 2 o'clock, and by 4 o'clock we had a deal and signed contracts.
Wow,
We thought that was a God thing.
I guess.
And they come and go in Journey. So yeah, that happens. So anyway, that was fun times. We probably ought to touch base with Julie Haynes. She'll have a better recollection of how that all came down.
Well, people have mentioned, including Rick, like at the very beginning, when we were just as an OASIS team sketching out, what we thought we ought to be talking about each week during this 20-week period. And his immediate reaction to Beverly Hall was, that was painful. And several people have said that. And that's the first time I'd ever heard that. Talk to me a little bit about what are y'all talking about?
Gosh, I'm not sure. It wasn't painful at the start. Maybe the fire was the painful part.
No, this had to do with people deciding things about being there or not being there. Nathalie, what were you saying?
I can talk about it from the viewpoint of a member of Sanctuary who had been supported through Journey for Truth Be Told. Well, Sanctuary also very much supported Truth Be Told before it was ever Sanctuary. So anyway, bottom line is Sanctuary was what Cynthia Clausen and Reagan Courtney.
Oh, see,
There we go.
I remember the Courtney part
earlier.
Yes, so this is what happened, and I'll try to make it brief and direct. But when I came to Terrytown, it was Terrytown Baptist, and the pastors were Clint and Pam Dunnigan, who were amazing, amazing. And I had come after a year of not going to any church after being at River Bend for 15 years and helping to start all their women's ministry, and finally being asked to not do any more women's retreats. So I was in a lot of pain for a year. And somebody said to me, you should visit my church. We have a new pastor and his wife. And Clint and Pam Dunnigan had both been divorced by their partners in ministry. And for a while, they had not been able to do any more church work. And so they were where they possibly still are, which is in San Antonio at a college teaching. But they were invited to come to Terrytown. And Terrytown, what they had gone through was when gay people started coming to church, their church was very, very upset and finally made a firm decision that no gay people could be in any positions of authority. And half of the church was gone in over a period of several months. I don't know how it all worked, but I came in right after that. Clinton Van Dunnigan had open-hearted to everyone, and the church had started building back a little bit. But I'm guessing the church sanctuary would seat 250 or something like that. And there were probably, at the time I came, maybe 75 people. And some of them were still old school, but they had lived in that neighborhood forever and they were staying. And they stayed even though they were uncomfortable. And Clint and Pam did this beautiful connecting work with all of us. And they were good friends with Cynthia and Reagan Courtney, who were whatever you call it, kind of like artistic, creative pastors of Second Baptist in Houston. They always did big performance things at Christmas for this gigantic Baptist church. Reagan is a playwright, Cynthia's a singer, and very popular with the gay community. And so anyway, bottom line is Clint and Pam invited Cynthia and Reagan to move to Austin, and that the two couples were going to co-pastor the church, which was then Tarrytown Baptist Church. And Cynthia and Reagan pulled up roots, moved to Austin, and within 2 weeks, Clint got diagnosed with a serious heart problem. And the doctor told him he needed to leave. He needed to retire. And they bought a 5-wheeler and moved and helped to take care of a lighthouse somewhere in Seattle area for a while. But bottom line is Cynthia and Reagan, who had never had any experience being ministers for just a church themselves, took over. And that's what was happening when the people from Journey started looking into the possibility of connecting with Tarrytown. And that went on for over a year. It seems to me like a couple of years, where there were, and a whole group of older people came, and Holmes, do y'all remember Holmes?
Yeah, I remember
Mhm.
Holmes.
Holmes Gwynn.
Gwynn, yeah,
Holmes Gwynn, yeah, Holmes was
I like that.
the man from Journey who so wanted them to come to Sanctuary. I was the woman from Tarrytown who so wanted Sanctuary to take Journey in. And so Holmes and I were both just praying and lobbying and doing everything behind the scenes that we could to just get people to seriously try to work it out. But the biggest sticking point with the sanctuary was they had a typical sanctuary with pews, wooden pews. And Journey just was absolute that they would not stay in a church that they couldn't meet in a circle or be able to arrange
That
those
is
chairs.
true.
And Nathalie, I also remember that there was kind of like a date, so to speak, to see if the two could merge. And
Yeah.
it was like, it was a Monday, Thursday, and it was nice and it was a sweet service, but there was just some sort of uncomfortableness.
Oh, yeah.
Just Rick and Reagan just didn't mesh.
Yes.
They were like Mutt and Jeff. It just didn't congeal. And then after that, like all the talks had stopped.
Yes.
Yep.
It was just
We were
hard.
talking
the
to
seating-
Sanctuary from the warehouse. Even.
Yeah, about
Seating
combining.
is an important thing for us. I mean, you know, this whole OASIS thing, we're talking about things that are really core to Journey, and the ability to change how we sit and how we are in relationship to one another so that we're not in these regular pews every single time. That's core. That is
Yeah.
absolutely core to who Journey is and who we are as a faith community.
Why do you
So
think
it's
that is?
this whole thing about the pews being a sticking point, that's really not nothing. It really was
It's
a big
deal.
problem.
Why is
Yeah.
that a big deal to us?
It's about hierarchy.
Mhm.
There's, you may have noticed there's never an elevated seat where Rick would reside, or Leslie, or anybody,
The preacher.
the preacher. So the whole, one of the tenets of Journey is it's a level playing field, and we're all walking together hand in hand.
And in addition to that, when things about worship are the same every single time, when everything, when most things are the same every single time, you take it for granted and you stop paying attention.
Yeah.
So that's why, and I learned more about this when I joined the worship team. We would deliberately change and think about how were we going to have the seats arranged for this series, or even a particular Sunday. Because what we would think about, well, what are we trying to do? What kind of feeling are we trying to establish? Let's think about what kind of seating arrangement will make that work. Do we want to be in the round? Do we want to have it in a couple of sections? Do we want it all facing this way, all facing that way, all facing the other way? What do we want to do?
Random.
What will make that work? Do we want to have the chairs messy? Do we want rows? Do we want clumps? What are we going to do? So that flexibility is important for being able to do the kinds of creative things that I think are part of what makes Journey.
Yeah.
And that changing helps shake people up and make them pay attention a little more.
Gail, that one of the papers that I sent you, I go over that. It was, I broke it down. It was a class I was taking with Jennifer Lord.
Oh,
And so I broke it
worship.
down into the worship elements
Yeah,
and how the room was set up to meet those elements.
gotcha.
And this is so interesting because Gail and Jacob and Paula and I were talking yesterday about worship. And Jacob, tell them what you told us about what Rick said in the class about he took the whole class into a traditional church and had everybody kind of break down. Anyway, that's so interesting because I think that became a foundational thing for Journey, not to have traditional elements. Go ahead, Jane.
Not to have traditional elements without thinking about them.
Yes.
Right. That's the key point. It's not that, oh, we're not going to use traditional stuff because we're so hip and cool, right? It's when we use traditional elements, it is because we have really thought about them and are using them in a specific and intentional way. Not, we have it this way because we've always had it this way because that's tradition.
Yes, and for me, I say a lot of times, I mean, this is really near and dear to my heart, is I want to take back those traditional elements from where they've been warped and used as weapons and twisted. And so I welcome the traditional elements, but they have to be explained and reframed as we.
And that is a big tenet with what used to be referred to as the emerging church. And I wasn't part of your discussions like at the end of the warehouse time, but there was a lot of people who ended up leaving who wanted to be an emergent church. But it had that kind of that tenet of you have a set amount of worship elements that are always there, but how do you reframe them? How do you make it unique? One of the things that I remember, this is just an example, and I thought it was really, really cool. This was something we did in the warehouse. It's when David was still alive. And they were doing, it was after Easter, so it was kind of going through those chapters in Acts immediately after the crucifixion. And communion was a little tortilla and a piece of fish.
Mm.
I remember that day.
Like the breakfast on the beach.
That's what it was, yes, yes.
Yep.
So you asked earlier, Gail, about why it might have been painful being at Beverly Hall.
Yeah.
And I think that is an interesting question. There were, from my perspective, it was, again, recovering perfectionist, right? So control is a big thing for recovering perfectionists. And we no longer had the same kind of control over our space and what we did in it, because we had to pull it all out and pack it up again, and everything had to be temporary. And there was just so much more freedom in the warehouse to do some incredibly creative things. Now, we were still really darn creative, at Beverly Hall, because we have been blessed with very creative people helping make Journey things happen. But I think it was stifling in some ways. And I wonder if that is part of what Rick meant, was that, you know, as an incredibly creative person, as an incredibly artistic person, I wonder if the reason he said that it was painful was maybe because of those kinds of limitations.
Did we leave? Did we lose folks as a result of the move to Beverly?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, lots.
We lost a lot of folks, which was also very painful.
Yeah.
And I find it ironic,
why
Laurel, that you're saying
everybody
a lot of people left because they wanted to be an emergent church. I was going to those emergent church conferences at that time, and I read Phyllis Tickle's book, and she's got this great sort of four-leafed diagram, this kind of Venn diagram, describing the various aspects of the emergent church and various churches through history and so on. And Journey is smack in the center of that diagram. Okay. So other people leaving Journey because it wasn't emerging enough, they're freaking nuts. They clearly hadn't read Phyllis Tickle.
There was a lot of old wounds.
Yeah. I think
There was a lot of old wounds after David died, and expectations from Rick that Rick didn't always follow or abide by. The what, Susan?
Yeah, that Rick didn't fulfill. Expectations.
Yeah, that didn't fulfill.
The year after David died, there was a major depression in the entire church.
Yeah.
And people were not getting their expectations met. And I think, I don't know what the time frame between when David died and when we moved to
A year.
yeah, it was a year. So I think it was still the hangover from David's death.
Well, what kind of expectations are y'all talking about?
Oh, just showing up to work.
He was depressed and he wasn't there fully.
Yeah. His sermons were just like calling it in, or he would be angry. It was a hard time. And then he went on, like they decided, and John and Susan probably remember this better. The shepherds decided that let Rick have some time away.
Sabbatical. Like
a sabbatical, and so that they would divvy up, you know, the weeks between the different, you know, like soul or heart or whatever to take on worship for that week. And then there were hurt feelings with that. Then they tried to have kind of like a re-remembering what Journey was about, and they had like dinners. So they were like chili dinners or something. And there were issues with that. People were just really kind of, I think that they were mourning David and looking for some direction, and it just wasn't coming. So that was part of it. I remember being approached by Jim Cannon about, you know, that disillusionment. And Jim was one of the people who started Journey. John, I was trying to remember the 5 people who approached Rick after he was fired.
Yeah.
Do you remember who those were?
I don't know, Laurel. I could speculate. Jim Cannon was certainly one. Maybe Mike Lawrence.
Yes, and Doug Sheehan. And I thought you.
No, it wasn't. No, I came in about 2 weeks deep into Journey.
Slacker.
Yeah. So I saw the announcement in the Austin American Statesman. That's how I got the Journey. So. Oh, and there was another one. Who was the creative man he's in advertising still in Austin?
Matt Manro?
His wife.
Oh, Manro too.
Yes.
Yes.
They were key. They were key in the formation of Journey.
Yeah.
And I think, and of those were the key formative figures, and a lot of them did not make the transition out of the warehouse for one reason or another. So that was that's probably part of the pain of Beverly Hall.
Yeah.
And Rick and Leslie were in active grief. I mean, they worked so closely with David, and they were such good friends with David. And then they were trying to help his daughters get kind of, you know, established and not be completely at sea and as well. And remember how much with Calla,
Yeah.
how much effort they were going to with David's youngest.
Yeah.
And they had a lot going on. They were grieving just as much, if not more, as everybody else. And a lot of people, okay, I'm going to say what I think, even though we're being recorded, because that's just who I am.
Well, that's what it's for.
I have never considered myself to be part of organized religion in particular, in part because people piss me off. And a lot of times, frankly, they're just not worth it. And a lot of the stuff that people get really caught up in regarding organized religion, I frankly have no patience for. And one of the things that I think Laurel is referring to is one of the things for which I have zero patience, which is other grown-ass people thinking that their pastors are their property and that their pastors are not human beings who have lives of their own freaking own. I mean, come on. This probably stems in large part because I'm a teacher's kid. And we would run into I'd be out in the grocery store or out at a movie or something with my mother, and we'd run into her students and they'd be surprised like she didn't just live in a broom closet at the school on weekends.
Under the stairs.
I mean, come on. So I already had an appreciation for what it was like living a job where a large group of people thinks that you are there only for them and that's the only place you exist. Mm-hmm. So apparently this is a thing. Not only at Journey, but just in general, because I've heard about it from lots of people who work in ministry, that sure, you love your parishioners, but they seem to think that you are their personal property and not a human being with rights of your own.
I think that's a big thing. Anytime you pay someone, it's like
still doesn't mean you own them. I mean, so people have these expectations, right? And in my opinion, those people need to take a really good look at themselves about the kinds of expectations they have of their pastors.
Yeah. But nevertheless, they had that expectation. It wasn't met, and so they left.
But I have fond memories of Ross and Saunders and Sanctuary because we bonded really closely with Sanctuary once Brett came on board as their minister, and we had an extraordinarily compatible. Brett. What did I say?
Oh.
Brett. Yeah. So when Brett came on board, and
new journeyers arrived. New people came to Journey
arrived
at that time. Quite a lot of new people actually came to Journey during that time.
Well, the other thing I vaguely remember is that there were some people in the Sanctuary organization that were worried that Journey would just consume them like an amoeba. It would just, and they'd be disappeared. And I think there were a lot of people that were worried about that. And we could have done it.
Yeah.
We easily could have done it.
But we try to use our powers for good.
Yeah, we chose not.
I think that's an important point. It is so important for Journey to choose the place they stand.
Yeah.
We did have a choice then whether to consume them or not. And I am so heartened to hear that we chose not to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because it was hard for me when there started being way more cars in the parking lot for Journey on Sunday mornings than there were in the parking lot for Sanctuary's parking lot.
Yeah.
But it had been that way already there was our parking had been scanty because people were leaving, and that had been a steady drain for the whole time that I was there, and I was there for years. Mm-hmm. But it was so tempting to go over and see what Journey was doing instead of going into my church and doing that. And my close friend, Kim Bassinger, that I met there, and we became really good friends. She and I had tried to get a women's Our Many Selves class going, and there were 5 or 6 women that started, and one dropped out really fast. And then pretty soon it was just Kim and I. And Kim just said, I'm just sick of this. I'm going. And she went over to Journey. And I was still, because
she was a great journeyer.
When they were Terrytown Baptist, they had commissioned me a minister to women. And I felt such a deep loyalty toward this church that had really, supported me. Anyway, I want Susan Harris to say hello, unmute herself. And when did you come, Susan?
Hello.
Hello. When did you start your journey experience?
I was at Beverly Hall.
Okay.
Is when I started. And Rick was so gracious to let me bring my little art event for a couple of years. And so that was really nice for me.
So
that was a fun.
Go ahead.
No, I said that was a fun experiment. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that's one of the things. I had never belonged to any church that did what they did with you. So
tell me what you're talking about. What was it, Susan?
I was with a evangelical gay church for a while, and started this online. This was before Zoom. It was an online art event. So I would invite artists from all over to send me their art, and we would play it in the room, and then we would show it online, and trying to learn how to stream. And the people that I had helping me, it didn't come across as hopeful as I had hoped, but it was an idea. No, you did great. I'm talking about other years. You did an amazing job, but
thank you. It was fun. Those were good events.
Yeah, we did some. So it was happening in the room, but it was also happening online. And we did have some people that were from California. I think the furthest we had was, where was he? I mean, we had some people in England watching. Anyway, it was really cool. It was kind of before Zoom, where now we can go anywhere. But it was that concept.
You were ahead of your time.
I was ahead of my time.
You really were. I mean, because I can remember when you asked me to help you, it took a little while for me to understand what you were getting at. And now thinking about it now, as we're talking, like what you were doing 10 years ago, what would be incredibly easy and widely accessible to everybody now. I mean, everybody
Right.
understands what you were doing now, especially after the year of pandemic, of the year of the plague. Everybody would completely understand exactly what you were doing.
Right.
So yeah, you were ahead of your time.
Music, you guys, Susan?
I'm sorry?
Was it all music?
Oh, no, it was art, dance.
Poetry.
We had this one gal who made her own movie, and she gave a clip. So we got to show the clip, and then we got to interview her. People from all over got to send in questions, so we would ask their questions to her.
Cool.
So we did have some music, all kinds of conceptual art. We had somebody who brought in kind of like their gallery showing. Yes, we had poetry. We did all sorts of, we tried to do it. It was just all the different kinds of arts. And one of the concepts that I had hoped to display was what the gay community brings to the church was one thing. And the other part was having the church embrace some of the gay community. And then also the having Journey, which is not really evangelical, kind of mixed with an evangelical gay church. It was just kind of a really weird, awkward thing, you know.
Witness.
It's kind of like pickles and ice cream. Sometimes you want both of them at the same time, but together it was.
Well, Susan, you have always been so good at pushing me outside my comfort zone. And I will tell you guys right now that whole pickles and ice cream thing, my awkwardness in dealing with the gay evangelical church is not the gay part. It's the evangelical part.
Yeah.
So, bring on the gay. That's awesome.
I think this is great. And
it's the evangelical
honestly,
part Susan's had to help me with.
I think that we're nearing the end of our time, and it sounds like the time at Beverly Hall was both one of life and one of death. It was loss and it was growth. And this has been such a rich discussion. And I'd like to close it with Margaret showing us a video that, tell us a little about the video, Margaret.
Yes. So what I found, I helped with this one, but I didn't make this one. So I found in my files the photo slideshow that Rick put together called Last Call at Beverly Hall. And we showed it at the service, our very last service we held at Beverly Hall.
Oh my gosh, that's
And so some of y'all might remember it.
I don't remember this
Hall
because I was in
Village.
San Antonio by then.
So it'll be new to you. So one question, do you guys want to just watch the photos and listen to the music, or do we want narration at all?
No, let's just
No,
watch.
just
Okay.
we'll just watch it.
All right, just asking, just in case, because I know you guys don't know everybody, and so just saying. Okay. So Rick found it. I took a number of the photos, but he's the one who put it together and chose the music. All right.
Dream on, little dreamer. This is how it all begins. Dream on, little dreamer. This is how it all begins. Move your feet. Feel how sweet it is. Dream on, little dreamer, and follow all of your signs. You gotta gather up what you need. You gotta choose a direction. And when the moment is right for you, you gotta go. You gotta keep your ideas high. Gotta know that the sky belongs to no one. You know you got to go. Dream on, little dreamer. This is how it all begins. Keep on, little dreamer. Keep holding what you are. Move your feet. Feel how sweet it is. Dream on, little dreamer. Follow all of your signs. You gotta gather up what you need. You gotta choose a direction. And when the moment is right for you, you gotta go. You gotta keep your ideas high. Gotta know that the sky belongs to no one. You know you got to go. You gotta You gotta gather up what you need. You gotta choose a direction. And when the moment is right for you, and you gotta go. You gotta keep your ideals high. You gotta know that the sky belongs to no one. You know you got to go. You got to go.
That was so powerful, so beautiful. And I was touched especially by the slide of people gathering around praying, and how many of us there were, and all the creativity and all those slides. And I just want to say that even though we are smaller now, as a result of all these experiences that we've had in our life as Journey, it's still the same spirit there in the center. It's still life there in the center. And I so appreciate everybody coming and telling your stories and being honest and open, and I look forward to the next time we gather in a couple of weeks. We'll do a campfire. I love you all.
And picnic.
And a picnic.
Picnic on Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to drive in. I
be
can't
so
promise
great, Laurel.
anything,
Gotta go.
but
That'd be wonderful.
I'm gonna try.
That would be great.
Would be great, Laurel.
I'll see you all next time.
Sunday.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.